In this episode, we look at Zero Trust Architecture, which is a security design approach built around careful verification instead of automatic trust. The name can sound harsh at first, but the idea is not that every person is suspicious or every device is hostile. The idea is that access should be earned each time based on evidence. Older network designs often treated the internal network as safer than the outside world. Once someone was inside, they might reach many systems with fewer checks. Zero Trust challenges that assumption. It asks the environment to verify the user, evaluate the device, check the application request, and consider the surrounding context before allowing access. For a new security learner, the key shift is simple. Location alone should not create trust. Being on a company network, using a familiar device, or having a password should not automatically open the door to everything. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is part of our companion study series. The first book is a detailed study guide that explains the exam and helps you prepare for it with confidence. The second is a Kindle-only ebook with 1,000 flashcards you can use on your mobile device or Kindle for quick review. You can find both at Cyber.Me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. Traditional security often relied heavily on the perimeter. The perimeter is the boundary between a trusted internal network and an untrusted outside network. Firewalls, virtual private networks, VPNs, and gateway controls were used to protect that boundary. These controls still matter, but the modern environment is more complicated. Users may work from home, cloud applications may sit outside the company data center, mobile devices may connect from many locations, and attackers may already have stolen valid credentials. If a design assumes that everything inside the network is trustworthy, a single compromised account or device can create a large problem. Zero Trust responds to that reality by reducing the amount of automatic trust given to any location or connection. It does not remove the perimeter completely. Instead, it creates many smaller decision points where access must be checked more carefully. The basic Zero Trust question is not just who are you. It is also what are you using, what are you trying to reach, where are you coming from, how risky does this request look, and should this action be allowed right now? Identity is still central, but identity alone is not enough. A correct username and password may be stolen. A trusted user may be using an infected laptop. A normal account may suddenly try to access an unusual application from an unfamiliar location. A request may come at a strange time or attempt to download far more data than usual. Zero Trust uses context to make access decisions. Context does not guarantee perfect security, but it gives the system more information than a simple allow or deny rule based only on network location. The goal is to make trust specific, limited, and continuously evaluated. User authentication is the first major part of Zero Trust architecture. Authentication is the process of proving that a user is who they claim to be. A password by itself is often too weak because passwords can be guessed, reused, phished, stolen, or exposed in data breaches. Multi-factor authentication, MFA, improves security by requiring more than one kind of proof. The user may know a password, possess a trusted device, or use a biometric factor, depending on the system. Strong authentication makes it harder for an attacker to use only stolen credentials. In a Zero Trust design, authentication should also match the risk of the request. Accessing a low-risk internal announcement may not require the same strength of verification as accessing payroll, production administration, or sensitive customer records. The more sensitive the action, the more confidence the system should require. Authentication is only the beginning, because a verified user should still receive only the access they need. Authorization decides what the authenticated user is allowed to do. A regular employee may need to read a human resources policy, but should not be able to change payroll data. A help desk technician may need to reset certain account settings, but should not have broad administrative power across every system. A developer may need access to a test environment, but not direct access to production secrets. Zero Trust supports least privilege, which means users and services receive only the permissions required for their role and task. Access can also be time-limited, scoped to specific applications, or approved only for certain conditions. This reduces the damage if an account is misused. A stolen account with limited access is still serious, but it is less dangerous than a stolen account with broad, permanent access. Device health is another major part of zero-trust architecture. A device can be a laptop, phone, tablet, workstation, server, or virtual system. Even if the user is legitimate, the device may be unsafe. It may be missing security updates, running outdated software, lacking disk encryption, showing signs of malware, or failing to report to management tools. A zero-trust design can consider device health before allowing access to sensitive applications. For example, a managed laptop with current updates and endpoint protection may be allowed to access internal tools. An unknown personal device may be limited to lower-risk services or denied access to sensitive systems. This is not about punishing the user. It is about recognizing that the device becomes part of the access decision. If the device cannot be trusted enough for the requested action, access should be limited until the risk is reduced. Device inventory supports device health because you cannot evaluate what you do not know exists. Inventory means keeping track of approved devices, their owners, their configuration, their software, their security status, and their relationship to the organization. In a simple environment, this may sound easy. In a real environment, devices appear and change constantly. Employees receive new laptops, phones are replaced, contractors bring equipment, cloud systems are created, and servers are retired. Without inventory, unknown devices may connect to the network or attempt to access applications without proper review. A zero-trust approach treats known and unknown devices differently. A known device can be checked against expected security standards. An unknown device may need enrollment, restriction, or additional verification before it receives access. Device inventory helps turn access decisions from guesswork into evidence-based control. Application access control is where zero trust becomes very practical. The purpose is not to give a user broad network access and then hope they only use the correct application. The purpose is to connect the right user on the right device, under the right conditions, to the specific application they need. This reduces unnecessary exposure. A finance user may need access to a finance application, but not to database administration ports or unrelated development systems. A contractor may need access to one project portal, but not the full internal network. Application-level access helps limit lateral movement because the user is not automatically placed inside a large trusted area. The system evaluates the request to the application itself. That makes access more precise. Instead of trusting a network connection, the architecture trusts a specific, verified, policy-approved interaction. Context signals help the system decide whether a request looks normal or risky. These signals may include location, device type, time of day, user role, application sensitivity, recent login behavior, network path, authentication strength, and whether the device is managed. A login from a normal device during normal work hours may be treated differently from a login from an unfamiliar device in a distant location. A user reading a routine page may be treated differently from the same user attempting to export a large amount of sensitive data. Context does not mean the system automatically knows the full story. Travel, remote work, and changing schedules can create unusual but legitimate activity. That is why zero trust should support flexible decisions. The system may allow access, deny access, require stronger authentication, limit the session, or alert security staff, depending on the risk. Policy is the set of rules that guides those decisions. A zero-trust policy may define who can access an application, which device conditions are required, what authentication strength is needed, and which actions require extra review. A policy decision point evaluates the request, and a policy enforcement point carries out the decision. You do not need to memorize product-specific designs to understand the concept. One part of the architecture decides whether the request meets the rules, and another part makes sure the decision is enforced. Strong policy depends on accurate information. If identity data is wrong, device inventory is incomplete, or application sensitivity is poorly defined, the decision may be weak. A zero-trust design is only as good as the signals and policies behind it. The goal is not more rules for their own sake. The goal is access decisions that reflect real risk. Zero trust also supports segmentation and the idea of assuming breach. Assuming breach means designing as though an attacker might eventually get inside some part of the environment. That mindset changes the design. Instead of building one large trusted zone, the architecture limits what any user, device, or service can reach. If one workstation is compromised, segmentation should make it harder to reach servers. If one application account is stolen, least privilege should limit what it can do. If one service is exploited, application access controls should reduce the chance that the attacker can call every other service. Zero trust does not guarantee that compromise will never happen. It tries to limit the blast radius, which is the amount of damage one compromise can cause. Smaller access paths and stronger verification give defenders more chances to detect, contain, and respond. A common misunderstanding is that zero trust is a single product or a quick switch that can be turned on. It is better understood as an architecture and operating model. Tools can help, but the real work involves identity, device management, application mapping, policy design, logging, user experience, and ongoing maintenance. Another misunderstanding is that zero trust means users should be blocked constantly. A poorly designed zero trust program can create frustration, but that is not the goal. Good design should make normal access smooth when risk is low and make risky access more carefully checked. If every action feels painful, people may look for workarounds. If controls are too loose, the architecture does not reduce risk. The balance comes from understanding what users need, which applications matter most, and which signals reliably show increased risk. Monitoring is essential because access decisions should not be forgotten after the first login. A session that looked safe at the start may become risky later. The device may change state. The user may attempt unusual actions, or new threat intelligence may make a location or pattern more suspicious. Continuous evaluation means the system can keep checking whether the conditions still make sense. That may lead to a renewed authentication prompt, a session limit, an alert, or access being removed. Logs are also important because they show which users accessed which applications, from which devices, under which conditions, and what decisions were made. Without monitoring, zero trust becomes a policy idea with little feedback. With monitoring, the organization can improve rules, investigate incidents, find gaps in inventory, and understand whether the architecture is actually reducing risk. Zero trust architecture gives you a modern way to think about access. It does not depend on one trusted network, one password, or one big boundary. It evaluates the user, the device, the application, and the context of each request. Strong authentication helps prove identity. Least privilege limits what that identity can do. Device health helps decide whether the endpoint is safe enough for the requested access. Device inventory tells the organization which systems are known, managed, and expected. Application access control narrows access to what is needed instead of opening broad network paths. Context and risk signals help the system respond differently to normal and unusual behavior. The larger lesson is that trust should be earned, specific, and limited. When every access request is evaluated based on identity, context, and risk, the environment becomes harder to misuse and easier to defend.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit DailyCyber.News.